All right, so today I want to talk about resilience prescriptions. And then after I do that, I want to compare it to the 12-step program. So let's start with the resilience prescriptions. Number one, you want to have an internal locus of control. So what does that mean? It means power over your own life and that you believe that your actions create the result. So here's an example. So let's say you are in school and you fail a class or you fail a test. A person with an external locus of control, they're going to blame the teachers, they'll blame the students, they'll blame that they just didn't have enough time. But if you have an internal locus of control, what you will do is your actions will look, your actions, will create a result. So what you're going to do is that you're going to study harder. So most likely you have a much better chance of doing well. I'll give you another example. In the bodybuilding world, if you lose a bodybuilding contest, a person with an external locus of control, they're going to be the first ones that say that the judges screwed them over, or they're going to blame something else in their life. But if you have an internal locus of control, what you do is you go back to the drawing board and you will get a better nutritional program, or you'll work out harder. And in doing so, your chances of improving next time are much better. So that's an internal locus of control. The second parameter of our resilience prescriptions is you want to increase your self-esteem. So what does that mean? It means a couple of things. Number one, it means that you feel that you're a competent human being and that basically you have a pretty good chance of getting things done in your life. You can also accept the things that you cannot do very well, but know that you can try harder and then you can improve on those. So that's the first part. But the second part might be even more important. It's the ability to accept the love that's given to you in your life, and also knowing that you are lovable and that you deserve love. Without that, you're not going to do very well, and you'll probably self-harm, which is, I would say, a big part of drug and alcohol addiction. Number three, you want to increase the meaning and purpose in your life. You want to be able to have strong goals. You want to know who you are and where you're going. If you don't have that, then any port in a storm will look good, and who knows where you're going to go. It'll definitely take you off of a life plan. And again, if you don't have meaning and purpose, your resilience is not going to be very high. So number four on our resilience prescriptions is to increase your ability to resolve your childhood traumas. Once you can make your unconscious conscious, you can start making decisions today instead of relying on old scripts, schemas, and these faulty beliefs that you got in your past that were never actually yours. You bought into them probably from some type of adverse event. So once we can start resolving those childhood traumas, we can start increasing your resilience. So let's compare that to the 12-step program. Now let's start off by saying the 12-step program has about a 5 to 10% success rate, which is extraordinarily low, especially when you figure out that 50% of people that have drug and alcohol addictions, they actually grow out of it without having any type of program. And how do they do this? Well, what can happen is if somebody doesn't have meaning and purpose in their life, they may tend to move towards drug and alcohol addiction. But if somebody gets pregnant, then they decide, well, being a heroin addict does not really work well with trying to be a mother. So the drugs go to the side and their meaning and purpose becomes being a mother. Or let's say you're trying to do better in your life and you don't make a lot of money. Well, probably drinking 7 days a week is not helping you out. So at some point you make the adult decision to put away the drugs and alcohol and start paying attention to your job so you can be a better person in the world and for your family. And so that's what happens too. So you become an adult, you grow out of it. So again, 5 to 10% success rate, 12-step program, but yet 50% of people just grow out of it on their own. So let's go down this 12-step program, and I varied the words just a little bit to shorten it up so I could fit it on the board. Step number 1, admit you're powerless over alcohol and that your life has become unmanageable. Let's compare that to our resilience prescriptions. Now, admitting that you're powerless is the exact opposite of having an internal locus of control. So what are we doing here? We're actually teaching that you need to have a victim mentality or learned helplessness to get through in life. And it actually enables people. So this goes in direct contrast to the resilience prescriptions about teaching that you're powerless, because you're not powerless, you're powerful. So let's just cross that off. Okay. Because that one makes no sense. The second half of it says that you're powerless over alcohol and that your life has become unmanageable. Well, let's be honest about this. If you don't have resilience prescriptions, your life becomes unmanageable. Once that happens, many people choose alcohol and drugs to make up for their pain, and they want to numb their pain. So it's not that the alcohol and drugs make their life unmanageable. It's that they don't have the tools in their life to make their life manageable, and they turn to alcohol and drugs. So this whole first step here, it's a lie. So let's just cross that off. Not only is it unnecessary, it also hurts people because it's a lie. Number 2, a power greater than yourself will restore your sanity. Again, the definition of internal locus of control means that you have power over your own life. Self-esteem, again, power over your own life. So again, this breaks 2 parameters of our resilience prescriptions. So let's get rid of that too. That makes no sense. Number 3, turn your life over to God. Well, again, you know what I'm going to say, because that has nothing to do with an internal locus of control or having self-esteem. Has nothing to do with it. Again, it teaches victim mentality and it teaches learned helplessness. It also is what we call in psychology a spiritual bypass, because you're not actually doing anything to increase your own or update or your own psychology. What you're doing is you're doing a spiritual bypass by saying, don't worry, something outside or God will take care of it. That's not going to happen. So we're up to number 4. Make a moral inventory of yourself. Now we're getting a little closer, because that is actually, it's not unique to the 12-step program. That's what every person should do. It's what every parent should be teaching their children to do. So let's leave that one on there. Number 5, admit to the exact nature of your wrongs. Again, being honest about doing wrong things, that's what every parent should be teaching their children, not special to the 12-step program, but it's good enough. Let's leave that one. Number 6, have God remove your defects of character. All right, so here's where we have some problems. Because number 1, God's not removing anything, okay? Even if you believed in all that, it's free will. So you can either remove it or not remove it. That, again, is up to you. That's internal locus of control. But when you're putting it up to God to remove your defects of character, that's not going to happen. That takes hard work. And here's something else that's a problem. This is it's not language that anyone would use if they're a mental health clinician. You don't have a defect of character. What you have is a lot of trauma responses. Okay, so you have responses to very difficult things in your life. No therapist worth their salt will ever say that you have defects. That makes no sense. So no one will ever do that. All you're doing is traumatized people by using that kind of language. So again, let's get rid of that. That makes no sense. Number 7, have God remove your shortcomings. Again, same problem, because the people who wrote this have the same issue over and over again. They do not want to take responsibility for their life. They don't know what internal locus of control or self-esteem means. There's also another bigger issue here. When we're talking about dealing with what they call character defects and removing shortcomings. Here's the problem. You can work on those things, but you need the help of a mental health clinician. The people that are working at these AA meetings, they have about maybe a few months sober, and they're the experts. Being 6 months sober is not a mental health credential at all. Just for example, in order for a licensed therapist to see their very first client, they have 4 years of undergraduate school. They got 2 years of graduate school after that. Then they have a 1-year practicum. So what are we up to now? 7 years. Then you have supervision, which takes anywhere between 2 to 4 years. So you're looking at a minimum of 10 years of hard work, studying, and dealing with people in order to see your very first client as a licensed mental health clinician. But yet you're going to put all of your trust in someone who has 6 months sober as their one credential as a mental health clinician to deal with very severe adverse childhood experiences. That's not going to work. So let's take this off the board. And let's take this off the board too while we're at it. All right, let's make a list of people you've harmed. That's actually a good thing, because in that sense you are taking responsibility. So there is some internal locus of control there. And so I don't have any problem with that. And two, being able to admit that to people is also a good thing, because that's the basis of getting rid of shame and guilt, is to be able to tell somebody the wrongs that you have done and be able to put that in front of another human being. And if they can accept that, then there's a corrective emotional experience for you. But again, you have to do that with a very trusted person, which you're probably not going to meet at a random AA meeting. You would need probably a mental health clinician for that. I would even say a good person in your family that you trust. But if you're in this situation where you're going to a 12-step program, you probably don't have somebody in your family that you can trust to do that with. Making a list of people you have harmed, that's a good thing. Making amends, that's perfect. But I think every good parent would teach that. I mean, from first grade, I beat up this one kid in school, and I ended up ripping his t-shirt off, and of course, my parents weren't okay with that. I had to go back into school the next day, tell him I was sorry, and give him money for his t-shirt. That's just basic stuff of parenting. So let's take that off the list too, because that's not special to an AA program. Take personal inventory, admit when you're wrong. We talked about that. And that makes total sense. That's just being a good person. So we'll cross that off. Not special to AA meetings. Number 11, pray, improve your contact with God. Again, external locus of control, that doesn't have anything to do with self-esteem. It may have a little bit of meaning and purpose if that's your thing. But again, that's taking the power away from you and has nothing to do with the resilience prescription. Number 12, share message with other alcoholics. First of all, if you're a mental health clinician, you would never use the word alcoholic. You may say you're drug dependent, but you would not be associated with just being an alcoholic. You might be a person that has difficulty dealing with your feelings, and thus you may use certain substances to drown those feelings a little bit, but you would not be referred to as an alcoholic. But really, this is just a media thing here to spread the word for them so they can keep their multi-million or billion-dollar business going, which really has nothing to do with your individual sobriety. So we're down to like 0 steps here. A few of them work, but that's about it. So that's what we would compare the 12-step program approach compared to an evidence-based resilience prescriptions based on the 4 parameters that I've showed you. So before the show, Lola wanted me to ask a question here. So let me take a look at this. She wanted me to talk about the Hippocratic Oath, which is really first, do no harm, because sometimes it's better to do nothing than to intervene. So I'm going to talk about that for a second. Here's the number one thing about the 12-step program that actually works, is that you do or you can get a fellowship or social connection to other people, and you feel cared about. And that's a good thing. But other than that, in terms of do no harm, almost all of the steps of the 12-step program teach enabling. They teach external locus of control. They teach victim mentality. They teach learned helplessness. And they also teach spiritual bypassing. So you really would have to say to yourself, and I'm not making a decision for anybody, I would say you would have to start comparing it. So the decision would be, there are some positives about AA, the fellowship, meeting people. But I also say that you can get that by joining a gym. There's other things you can do. On the negative side, and I just mentioned those, there's a lot of negatives about the 12-step program that actually keep you addicted to external sources of power, which in no way, shape, or form will ever get you to have self-esteem. You will never learn from there to have an internal locus of control. Your meaning and purpose, again, will be something outside yourself. So the truth is that instead of having faith in something big outside yourself, you need to have faith in something bigger inside yourself, and that would be the issue there. And the way they did here is extremely superficial, so you will not resolve any childhood traumas unless you take a really deep look with professionals. And that's about all I have to say with that. I'm not going to make your decisions for you, just wanted to give you some ideas. And that's it for today's show.